Hi, everyone. My name is Johanna Mera, and this is Sicko Podcast.
Thanks for hopping on the podcast. I literally just started this week. You're like my fourth guest.
That's so exciting. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. I just thought of you because I see you on your social media. You're pretty active. You have like influencer vibes. Always inspiring people. So I just wanted to get to know you a little more.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy you started. I'm really happy you started.
That's the first step, right?
It's the first step for sure.
Okay. How was your week? How you been?
It's been a really heavy week. I'm not gonna lie. This has been a very challenging week. It has been really hard to focus at work. It's been just really difficult just to navigate through all these things with everything going on.
Yeah.
But I've been taking care of myself a little bit more. I'm a really big empath, so a lot of this is really affecting my everyday life. But yeah, that's honestly how my week was. How was your week?
It's a tough week. Not gonna lie. But I've been happy just to see the world's support for like everything going on and everything. And I've been also trying to take care of like my mental health in terms of because social media is like it's pretty toxic right now. You can't get away from it, which is a good thing. The awareness is there, but at the same time, like you just need an escape every now and then.
I feel that 100%. Like, do I stay on social media to stay informed? Do I get off of it for mental health? It's like that always divide that I'm like constantly trying to be on to be informed, but it's also weighing in on my mental health if I'm always tuned in,
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way this week when I decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a full day with no social media.
Right.
And I'm going to give myself a designated time to like educate myself and update what's happening in the world.
Right. You mentioned that it was a little hard at work. You work at Shut Up and Go, right?
I do work at Shut Up and Go, yeah. So I work as a marketing coordinator for Shut Up and Go.
Okay.
And then I recently started a job for New York Health and Hospital as a COVID tracer. So that was, like starting a new job with everything going on. It's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot.
So what's a COVID tracer?
So a COVID tracer is a program implemented by the Department of Health, who reached out to cases and contacts who have coronavirus, and our job is to basically be the intermediate to track down how many cases we actually have, and hopefully have a safety reopening for an NYC. So it's a new program. It's great. I'm happy to be a part of the team. I love the fact that they also recognize what was happening in the world. They spoke about that. They have a lot of mental health resources for us, and also talk about how like the simple fact that yes, we know that we're in a pandemic, but people have every right to be protesting. And so here are ways of how do you help navigate those people who have those questions for you. So that was nice. Like when I saw that, I'm like, thank God. Thank you that this is the people that I work for.
Yeah.
I'm happy that they're supporting people of color,
Yeah. That's dope. I didn't know, I saw like the new jobs that they had like with Corona and everything. And I didn't know that they had the COVID chaser. I know they had like something to keep track of testing and things like that. So that's pretty dope. How'd you?
Yeah, I'm happy that they started it. I wish they would have started it a little bit earlier in the pandemic. That would have been super effective. But I'm happy that they at least have it now to help people, educate people on what's happening. Because the media was doing an awful job of doing that.
Terrible. When
I mean media, I mean like straight up the news broadcasters. Like they were sensationalizing what the pandemic was. To the point that people were like, this isn't real. They're,
Conspiracy theorists.
But yeah. So I'm happy to be doing that.
Okay. So how is it having two jobs, like with your marketing coordination and with this? How's, your job at Shut Up and Go?
Oh, it's doing really well. I'm happy to be a part of that. So, handling two jobs is a lot. It's a lot of time management. The good thing is that both jobs are fully remote. So I kind of designated times to do certain jobs. And since I'm working from home, it's kind of hard sometimes to have that work-life balance, quite literally, when like my room is my office and also my downtime space, So I create those boundaries. Like I tell myself, it's like, I'm clocking out by 7, like at the latest, like if this is that's it. Tomorrow's a new day. Here are my tasks for the new day. But Shut Up and Go has been a really cool experience because I've been able to connect with so many people from around the world and learn about their experiences abroad. Like it's so cool to meet and network with so many awesome people from the community.
That was something that I was really looking forward with my new job. With Bright Flag was traveling. I was gonna set out some time to travel this year. There were some company trips and things like that. I was gonna go to Vegas with my friends. Then just like shit hit the fan, and I was like, and it sort of feels like if I'm speaking just selfishly, like damn, my 20s are kind of being wasted right now. Like this was the time to really just start everything, grow, experience, and with quarantine especially, I'm not getting that.
It's so difficult. Like I feel you on that because I'm like, all right, I've recently graduated. Like we both recently graduated. We're like, this is the time we have, we have a job, we have somewhat money, so we have more flexibility to do so with our college friends. And then the freaking pandemic in our prime, literally in our prime. So it's very frustrating. I 100% agree. It's so frustrating.
How long do you think it's gonna last?
Speaking frankly, well, this is from I think a while. I think that a pandemic, the reason why this was so exacerbated in NYC is literally because of the fact that we didn't take precautions and the measures that the government and people took, unfortunately, weren't enough to combat something like this. Because this could have been preventable in a lot of ways. It could have been preventable. It's really challenging, and that was the hardest part for me to really analyze and understand is why we let it go the way that it did. But I think that it's going to be a few more weeks, few more months. I think that society is going to be a huge shift in society in general after this, because this is like a big societal change that we've never experienced, especially in NYC, such a slowdown moment. Like we literally paralyzed, like no one was doing anything. And I think that will take a little bit of while for people to get back into it. But I'm happy that at least now we have more resources to combat the disease, and then also prevention from the doctors and stuff like that, and programs like that I'm a part of, which is exciting,
Yeah.
So hopefully very soon, I wouldn't say we have our summer. I wouldn't say we're popping bottles and shit. Like that's not.
I think
that really.
I think it's a wrap for 2020. I've been since it started, and I was just peeping everything that's going on. I was telling my friends, I was like, it's a wrap for 2020. It was like we planned our Vegas trip a month before. So 3 weeks before, I was like, all right, I'm gonna cancel my flights. I already know what's up. And yeah, to your point, this could have been avoidable. The Trump administration didn't think it was gonna be as big as it was, even though they had professionals set to warn them. But at the same time, a lot of countries in Europe, like Italy and things of that nature, I don't know if they were also incompetent in terms of preparing, but they were also hit hard as well. So I'm not sure. Of course, I blame Trump for most of it, but I don't know. I don't know if it could have been completely preventable.
No, of course. I think that at least how long this has been and the amount of cases that we've had could have been preventable if they started to shut down the city a little bit faster. If there was more action, that's a long time. And there was also misinformation. I studied public health in undergrad, and I was still having a difficult time figuring out how to get tested.
Yeah.
How to get tested. That information wasn't readily available. So because the resources just weren't there. And that was the part that was frustrating for me, But I think that I think that more than anything, 2020 is the learning experience for us, for everyone, for our generation, for everyone that's literally going through the motions of this. It's a learned experience. We now know what not to do, how to prevent certain things, and how we need to be funding these programs. Let's talk about that. The fact that they need to be funding these programs. How are you going to defund these programs that are important for the safety and health of our society? That is important, and that's really frustrating, but that's a whole nother topic. But yes, really, really frustrating.
Yeah, there was definitely a misconception between the correlation between the lack of outbreaks and emergency situations and the funding. They're like, oh, because there's not a lot, we can defund, but there's not a lot because they are funded and they are prepared. So it definitely is a learning experience. And speaking of the virus, it seems now, like with everything going on, that people are sort of taking a bigger risk in terms of going into these protests and being in front of like large crowds of people. And, just the covering of the virus itself has like gone down significantly in the media. Like, I have no idea. Like, last time I heard there was like a new strain. Even if you beat the old virus, you could get the new strain. It was affecting a different population of people that were younger. And then these protests happening, and that's all that's being covered. So do you think that it's going to get even worse just like in a matter of weeks once people start catching it again?
Well, it's inevitable. That's another thing. With that close proximity with people, there has to be more cases. Now, will we know if there's more cases? We wouldn't necessarily know if they're not tested. So here's like my advice to protesters. Like, I am super Black Lives Matter, and I would go protest, even as like I would go out to protest, but I wouldn't put myself at risk and not go without a face mask,
Right.
Like, that is important for people to consider. Like, you want to be out there, like, you should really be wearing a face mask. Why? Also because people of color has the highest levels in our inner communities of health disparities. So we wouldn't want to like jeopardize the health of other individuals as well. It is scary, but this is like, the time is now. I'm not going to tell people to stay home. Even in a pandemic, like, we still have to advocate for people of color. But we also have to take into account, like, please take care of yourself. Like, please wear a face mask. Please go get an antibody test. They're free. They're free all over NYC now. There's more resources now for us to know, If you're feeling sick, do behind the work scene. There's other ways to advocate for people of color. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're protesting. You can call representatives, So recognizing what your role is and what you can do. If you have someone that's immunocompromised in your house, it may not be the best thing to go out to a protest. And that's real, because unfortunately we're still in a pandemic, and that is crazy to think. Like, even though the media is not talking about it, it's still there. But that goes hand in hand with how the media sensationalizes everything. Like, it's like we're living in a novela. Like, literally, like, people are just no, that's literally, especially like, no, that they just love to sensationalize stuff.
Right. It's all about the drama. It's all about the story.
And the numbers it's a drama. Like, we're literally living in like the biggest drama. Like, no story writer could have anticipated this type of story. Like, this is like insane.
And it's like it's suiting because it's like a great grand finale to like Trump's presidency. Because if I was talking to my friends and other people in the podcast, it's just like these last 4 years have been long as fuck and also crazy, unpresidential. Every year there's something. Like 2016 and 2018, we had the whole kids in cages, illegal immigration movement, and they were just separating kids from families. And it was ridiculous. And I don't think that issue ever really got resolved. It just got quieter about it because we had to focus on other shit now. And they weren't switching up on that at all. It's crazy. And after that, we've always had school shootings that's been going on, police brutality that's been going on, also the rise in white supremacy. And it just all started building up towards, out of nowhere, out of everyone's focus on all these controversial issues. Now we have a pandemic that just happened to come literally out of nowhere. Last thing I was expecting, starting in like November 2019. Now the whole world is just sitting down. And it's the best scenario for Trump, in my opinion, because I feel like now that people can't really vote and they're trying to limit voting because it's quarantine and things like that, he has a really good chance of maybe going up for a re-election. And I don't really trust Joe Biden all the way to like win, secure the bag, because he has his own issues. So it's just
100%. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And it's so sad. Like, we're in a similar position where we don't have, I would say that from my personal opinion of who I would have wanted to be the candidate.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not my person that's representing, but that does not mean I'm not going to vote, and that does not mean I'm not going to vote for Trump. Like, I think that it's important to show out there, and like, hopefully maybe this is starting conversation. I feel like the Black Lives Matter movement came at a good time to really, like, there's a different level a different level towards this protest and this whole movement. It's like people are getting called out, companies are getting called out. The conversation now to go above and beyond and really educating people what being an ally is so important.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, maybe, having this conversation with your one racist aunt or your one, that one person may change their views on voting for Trump. That is like the goal. Maybe even if it's a small percentage, that small percentage might be the amount that might allow the Democrats to win.
That's a great point. And
fingers crossed. That's me being hopeful.
Yeah.
That's me putting it out into existence. That's me I would hate for this man to be reelected, especially with everything that's happened in these 4 years. Like, especially with the Grand Slam that has happened in the last 3 months, it would be a really challenging next 4 years. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, we're barely surviving these 4 years. And I 100% agree on this. This is something that I really noticed with this protest that's different from all the others. It's the push for, hey, help us join the movement. If you're not for it, you're against it. Speak up. We won't take silence anymore because silence isn't tolerated. And that's something that I've seen with, with my close friends. Like, as you know, grew up in Dykeman. So most of my best friends here are Dominican. And I've just seen like such a maturity in them in terms of like in high school, anytime they'd say some racist shit, I'd have to check them and be like, listen, that's not okay. Like, and they're like, it's just a joke. What's the problem? And I'm like, it's not a joke to me. It's some serious history behind that, or those words or comments. And now I didn't even have to tell them, be an ally, speak up. They're doing that on their own, like on their social media. Every day they're upset, they're posting stuff, having a conversation with me and themselves about how crazy things are. One of them, my friend Ricardo, he's been responsible for like getting like 3 people fired, 2 people kicked out of campus. I couldn't believe he was like, because he'll say like a racist ass comment on social media. We just call up the school, hey, or call up their email their job. And I'm like, wow. I found that out like 2 days ago and I was shook. I was like, wow, this is another level. There's really, a battery on people's backs. And it's great. It's wonderful, especially with other people of color. Like, we're a lot stronger united.
100%.
What do you think of the whole, I don't know if you caught up with the Dykeman controversy thing that happened?
Oh, that was a whole mess. Don't even get me started. I woke up that morning seeing that #Dominican was trending. Like, I've never seen the #Dominican trend. Like, literally trending. Thousands of people talking about it. And then I'm clicking and reading through it and it's literally just calling us racist. And I'm like, true. That is so true. Like, like my family's Dominican, and I'm very fair skinned, very light. Like, I'm a white Latina, straight up. Like, that's what it is. I have a privilege that my counterparts, Afro Latinas, may not have. And I really understand that privilege and recognize that we got to talk about it. Like, my family being fair skinned, and a lot of them in Dominican Republic, if I'm keeping it real, racist. And it's like microaggressions, things that are said, things that are spoken that need to be called out. And I was always the one from a young age to be like, let's talk about why that comment wasn't okay. And, and it's different when you're a child and younger, especially to kind of correct someone who's older. There's that power play where they're just like, you're not right because of this, that, and third. But I'm the first one to talk about it, like introducing it, because no one else is going to take the time to educate my own family. And someone understanding and having them understand their privilege is important. And I think that that's what a lot of people, unfortunately, in our community are not educated on. It was really disheartening to see that people my age were choosing to do an anti-looting protest. And I understand that it comes from this good place. They want to protect the community. But why are we valuing merchandise, products over lives? Like, why? Like, what happened, for example, I understand what happened in Fordham. This is because of what happened in Fordham and the rioting and the looting. But that wasn't the movement that was doing that. That was like young teens that were bored as fuck. Like, why are you going to steal from a bodega? what are you going to steal from there? Like, what's the point of that? Like, and also seeing how well the community did. Like, for example, that bodega that was broken into raised $30,000 in 2 days for the man who broke into, like, that was amazing. And the community that exists, I feel that's what we need to highlight, that the community exists. If they break into all this stuff in Dykeman, I understand that people will donate. The community will show up. Right. The community should not be showing up to protests like this, but rather support in times like that. That's my personal opinion. Really uplifting and amplifying voices. Well, and then it came up the next video that they just literally go against everything they were talking about by kicking out these people of color, saying, right, get out, you don't belong here. You don't belong. What do y'all sound like? You're allying with the police? First of all, do you not understand the police brutality that already exists in Dykeman? If you're really from Dykeman, you know what's up. You know what's up, what will be happening. Yeah. Like, how are you gonna step? That was like the biggest plot twist for me of 2020. Like, biggest plot twist.
I was shook too. I was also shook because, I've been in Dykeman, almost all my life, like 14 years. And yeah, that was definitely surprising. But to be fair to them, they recognized their mistake.
Yes.
Yeah, they apologized. They brought the people of color that they chased. They brought them back. They apologized. They shook hands. And I think that was as important, even more important, recognizing your mistake and saying sorry as a community, as representative of Dykeman, because Dykeman is a popular place in the city. It's a staple. Celebrities go there to Dykeman courts over the summer. It's always popping with the basketball games. So that I was happy that they did that. But I think that speaks on some deep issues in terms of colorism and in the community, in the minority community, and also just priorities and just the sensitivity that people are now. The first action is not always the best action or the first thought. And it's harder to think as a community, to think critically when people just react. And speaking on colorism, I stayed up till 5 a.m. talking to my best friend last night, and we were talking about a bunch of stuff. And she's a Latina woman, and we're talking about just the difference between colorism in the Latino community and colorism in the Black community. And I was basically saying that colorism in the Black community is more subtle, and colorism in the Latino community is less subtle. And what I mean by that is with the Black community, it's a problem, but a lot of it is it's very subtle in terms of the jokes, light skins versus dark skin. It's a joke, it's humor. Or in terms of relationships, what men may prefer naturally, not knowing the effect that or where that comes from, their attraction in terms of mixed chicks, I like a mixed girl with curly hair, and how dark-skinned women sometimes feel unloved, or people seem to be more racist towards them in general. And in the Latino community, it's more so from the old generation, the previous generation, like the grandma, whatever. Grandma might have 2 grandchildren, but she might treat one a lot better than the other because she has lighter skin. And that's it just is what it is. It's the grandchild has to just deal with that in terms of, oh, my sister is more beautiful than me, even though we're the same blood, and because she has a lighter skin than me. And I just thought that was interesting. I was wondering, you spoke on your experiences with that. What do you, when you have spoken out against, your family members and try to educate them, have their response been positive, or has it been just they're whatever?
It's challenging. I'm not gonna lie to you, because I recognize my privilege of being educated and knowing these things, but also, understand that it's not my role to save a racist. It's not my job to save someone from racism. Straight up. I cannot change someone, but I can plant seeds in them, for them to potentially be more empathetic to someone who doesn't look like them. And that's the approach that I take. When I was younger, I was angry. I was like, why the fuck does my family, why the heck does my family think this way? Yeah. Some of my family members were like, why do they think this way? I was angry, infuriated with the comments, with the unnecessary comments, those microaggressions, those things that they invalidating people of color. Like, that was really aggravating for me. As I got older, I realized that the approach that you have to take really is understanding that it's not your role to save them. Yeah. But it is important that you speak out. It's important for you to call them out and help them understand why that's not okay. Something very common that is given in the Dominican community. When I was younger, I wanted to transition to being natural. I was straightening my hair all the time, and my hair was called bad hair, pelo malo. Right. And that's because there's a huge anti-Blackness that exists in Dominican culture because of the dictatorship that we had, because of the upbringings and all that colonialism. There's a lot of self-hate when it comes to acknowledging your Black roots. And so when I wanted to go natural, it was a big thing. It was like, you're ugly that way. You're not. Like, it was like, there was little passive things. Like, for example, like my, family's like, you're not going to that wedding looking like that. You're not going to that event looking like that. Yeah. It was only until the natural curly movement came about that it was more accepted. It was more beautiful. There was more people that had curly hair on magazines, and people started to accept it more. And I'm happy that happened. That's something that's small, for example. But there's other things that I heard growing up was like, my grandmother, unfortunately, would be like, don't ruin the race. That's something that she grew up saying, as she grew up learning, that it's difficult to change her mind on that. And I understand why. My grandmother's 90 years old, during her time living in Dominican Republic, I understand why that was her way of thinking. That's not what I believe. That's not what my parents believe, thankfully. But you do hear comments like that. And it's difficult. It's difficult to navigate that, but I recognize that I'm the first one you have to just speak about. I'm like, Grandma, you can't say stuff like that. Because, guess what? Your age ain't going to save you sometimes. Yeah. You can't say stuff like that. You cannot say stuff like that and think it's okay. And here's why you shouldn't say that. I think that once people have more instructions and are more empathetic, that's what people are lacking: empathy and knowledge. Yeah. And that's important. But it is challenging because truly, though, every Dominican knows, I can guarantee you, every Dominican knows one racist family member. Because it's still embedded in their identity, and that's crazy. So it's our job as millennials and Gen D to really talk about it and amplify and sit down with our racist parents to educate them. Because also let it be known, we're educated on civil rights movement, for example. Dominicans who come immigrants, we're not taught that in the curriculum. A lot of them are not going to go out of their way to learn that, and so they don't even know that was a thing in the United States. Oh wow! So they don't understand, and that's real. And I had this conversation with my friends who are all Dominican, who have Dominican immigrant families, who really educated, amazing people, but didn't even know about that because it's not something that's taught to them in Dominican Republic. Right. So when they see this Black Lives Matter movement, they see that it's about George Floyd, yes, but a lot of them don't even know the layers that this is, Yeah. So it's hard for them to get 100% on board behind something like this. They won't understand why this is not just 1 week of protest. They're not going to understand why they're calling out people, why we're going above and beyond and talking to brands and, really being out here and amplifying these voices. It's difficult for them to understand. And because it's difficult, we got to talk about it. Yeah. Let's start the combo. We have to call these people out, take the time to educate what segregation is. That's crazy. They don't know about that. They really don't. Even my own family, for example, my family didn't know about segregation. And I'm keeping it a buck with you. Mm-hmm. They did not know about segregation. And so I sat them down and I was like, hey, did you know? Let's talk about really what was going on in the United States. Not even that long time ago, Right. Why it's leading to so many things like this. But yeah, sorry, that was a very long spiel, but it is. No,
it was really insightful. I feel like a lot of people, especially our generation, just assumes that if you don't know, you're dumb, or you just need to get educated. It's at a point now where a lot of people feel like it's not our responsibility to educate. You gotta educate yourself. But for, immigrants that haven't, weren't born in America and got a lot of their early on curriculum from wherever, their home country, and then they move here. That's very true. Because if I move to London right now, I won't know shit about the minority community in London or their history of what they went through, or, the history of anything that's been happening there. So yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. It's something that I never really thought of.
Of course, yeah, and it's so important I think that from both sides, like, it's not people of color's job, it's not to educate someone else, because it's exhausting, because it's their lived experience. But it is people who are allies, like, for example, myself, it's my freaking job to do that. And it's white people's job to do that. But there's a level of, also understanding from someone else's position, like recognizing and not necessarily getting so angry at the beginning. Like, you have to understand that these people just never knew this. And when you think about from that perspective, you can also understand why even potentially they are racist. Like, straight up, like, we have to think about it, like, really think about it. Why are they like this? I know maybe their upbringing, stuff like that, the curriculum, and how can I take a different approach to talk to them about this? It is important, but it is exhausting. So don't think that it's like people of color's job to do that. But if they do have like one Dominican friend, their parents who something racist, like, you can say something. You can, you can say something. We got to recognize what's not okay and okay.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely makes a lot of sense, because that's what I did. I educated my friends growing up, my Dominican friends, and they're the strongest allies now. I was talking to one of them, one of my best friends. He's a cop. I wanted to get like a cop's perspective on what's going on and like what he thinks, just to really understand their side, because I saw on his social media, he wasn't really, posting stuff like for the movement, more so against the negative of the movement. In terms of the rioting, he said looting, that's not how he solved the problem. And the agenda he pushes on his social media is not all cops are bad cops. There are more good cops than bad cops. And his percentage is 1% of cops are bad cops. So there's 700,000 cops, 7,000 are bad cops. So, and just throughout, he just kept like sort of reiterating that message, like, oh, the media is twisting things. And they are for some of them, but not all of them. In terms of, and on both sides, they catch cops, they try to set them up, and they also catch protesters and try to paint a certain picture as well. And I was like, okay, I understand. Let's say I accept that there are more good cops than bad cops. Then what? What's the issue? Like, what's next? And that's not a step that he was just there yet. And that made me realize just the level of sort of brainwashing that goes into police training. It's almost as if, like, if American soldier goes to Iraq, you're in enemy territory. Your only allies are your other soldiers, your comrades, and everyone else is an enemy. Terrorists don't have uniforms. ISIS doesn't have uniform. It could literally be anyone. And I think that's the mentality of cops in the United States. Like, as soon as you get that uniform, it's blue, brothers in blue versus anyone else, because our lives are at risk as soon as we step out in uniform. Therefore, in order to protect my life and protect my authority, I'm gonna overcompensate and do this and that. Yeah. And it's so crazy that I don't think that mentality can be fixed, but I do think that the fact that cops are above the law can be fixed. I think that's how to solve this issue, in terms of, hey, if I'm a cop and my partner's on somebody's neck or violating someone's rights, if I can't comfortably say, hey man, if you do that and get caught, you're gonna get fired and charged and maybe do some prison time if you're convicted comfortably. If I can't say that comfortably, there's a problem. And I think that's the real issue now.
There's a huge issue with that, I'll give you two perspectives. Like, let's say two people that protect and serve our communities, cops and doctors. You don't know of a doctor that's still in practice.
Yeah.
Not common. Why? Because if they malpractice, they're out, they lose a job. So why is that we have someone like a cop that does malpractice that still has their job and is glorified? The notion that not all cops are bad, but that's your team. That is your team. That's who you're working for. If you are against the same concept we say, either you're for or against the movement, you're for or against. Unfortunately, this is a position of a job, but we're quick to leave a job if we find out the CEO is racist, for example. A person of color will consider doing that. So thinking if I'm a person of color who's on the blue team, recognizing that they're also a part of the problem because they're in this team. I understand that their morale may not be there, but they're part of the problem. And that's a difficult bullet to bite, for a lot of them, because, it's the reality. That's what it is. You cannot be an ally from the inside, unfortunately. Yeah. You cannot be an ally from the inside because you're part of the system that is constantly mispracticing and abusing their power. And on top of that, like just the simple fact that they're funded so much, they're funded way beyond, even in a pandemic, funded way beyond the healthcare system. I saw literally like $5 billion, whereas like there was this chart, this Instagram chart that really did a great job of illustrating it. Like I work for NYC Health and Hospitals and our budget is like X, Y amount, like to say this, and this is the NYPD, Their training is only a few months. That's not okay either. Let's talk about that. Like it's not. And I get it. And I understand that they are good people. I will say there's good people within the NYPD. I'm not going to say there's good cops. There's not such thing, because at the end of the day, that's your team. That's who you're repping, who's abusing power, and you can't do anything unless you leave. Right. Straight up. Unless you join the other team and start calling Congress to defund your own program, and that's the reality. It's a hard truth to understand. It's going to be a controversial topic. People have their own opinions and are entitled to their own opinions about that. That's how I feel about it, honestly. Are cops necessary for our society? That's another question. Like, do we need cops? Really? Yes. But do we really need cops? No, truthfully, do we really need cops if we're going to be faced? Sorry, this is the train in the background that's like with the muffled noise.
No worries.
Do we need cops to be abusing their power, racial profiling, causing to the major mass incarceration rates? That's a whole other thing that's been happening in our society. And I just think that enough is enough. It's time to defund the police. It's time to call people out. It's time to throw these mofos in jail who are abusing their power, because that is beyond. It's time. The time is now. And I feel like that is the most beautiful thing about this movement now in 2020, that people are really amplifying the major issue with just police enforcement in general, and catching them too on camera, which is the cherry on top to really help people understand why we care like this.
Yeah. Earlier you said that this is the right time for this movement, and that's another topic that I was thinking about, because yes, any time really is the right time, but this during the Trump administration is really what I'm worried about. Like, even though he's on his way out, my concern is because, he's not on our side. He has chosen a side as president, which is wrong, I think. If you're a parent, you have two kids who are arguing, you don't pick a side. You just solve the issue, you unite, and things like that. But he's picked a side, and he's doing every move he makes is for, his re-election. And he knows who his people are. Therefore, all his responses are dictated towards them. He's always talking to them, even in code, because he can't be as explicit as he was during these sensitive times. So with all the traction that's happening, I've been just looking at the responses or the delays in response, in terms of the delaying of charging him and arresting the first officer, and the delaying of arresting the other 3 officers, and the quickness in doing martial law, and the quickness in arresting 1,000+ protesters and continue on to police brutality, even if it is caught on camera. And the fact that that's even happening, and that's a thing, really makes America kind of like unrecognizable to an extent, but only because it hasn't been this way in such a long time. So I always think like it's interesting in terms of protests, like with me and myself and how I feel. I love protests. I love the movement. I love supporting it. I remember a couple years ago, there was, I think it was Ferguson thing a couple years ago, and I considered protesting because I've been numb to these sort of like police brutality, anti-blackness thing for a long time. So then my whole thing was, I don't think this is going to change anything, which is why I didn't protest. And eventually I learned the importance of protests and how the difference between a short-term protesting for a short-term solution and that which might be the only thing that you can do and hope out of a protest, and protesting for a long-term solution. In terms of like a short-term solution is arrest these officers and charge them. That's a short-term solution. Long-term, this can't happen again. Like we shouldn't have to exert this amount of people and energy and, you know, allies in order to simply arrest officers who were culpable in a murder that was caught on camera for no reason. I'm just like very conflicted just in terms of like when I do some introspecting in terms of why I'm numb and, you know, why I haven't protested yet. And part of what I came up with is it sort of feels like an obligation. Like white people have privileges, Black people have like obligations. Like, oh, I'm obligated to educate on why certain things are not okay. I'm obligated to go protest and possibly risk my life or, you know, my health to stop this movement and stop it from happening to anyone else and spreading awareness. And this obligation was like such a thing, like even before when things were normal, it was seen like, oh, you're pulling the Black card. Stop pulling the Black card. People were getting like really fed up. I don't know if you remember that. Just for a certain amount of time, a lot of people were speaking up about pulling the Black card and just get over it. Slavery was hundreds of years ago, blah, blah, blah.
But that's gaslighting. So that's a whole other thing. That's wrong on someone else's part if they're doing that.
Yeah.
They're saying like pulling the Black card, like who are they to say? But sorry, continue.
Yeah, and you know, the minority community, I feel like even outside of Black people are just so understanding when it comes to, you know, white people and like racism, as you mentioned earlier, thinking of why they're racist. Like we understand it's systematic. Therefore, you know, you, even though you hold a certain level of responsibility for giving into the system and being a racist, but it's something that is you have to break away from. Like it's hard. Like if you come from a family of racists, just to have your own view outside of your mom, outside of your grandma or your community, it's tough. We understand that. And it's tough when like I'm a white Southerner and my ancestors fought, you know, in the Civil War and they're Confederates. My great grandfather's a general. He's respected. I'm looking at his medals, but people are telling me that, oh, he was a piece of shit. Of course, I'm going to identify with my grandfather and be proud in my heritage of warriors or whatever. So even we can understand, okay, white, Confederates, whatever, we understand that. So I think because the minority community is so understanding, we have a bad habit of pushing the line to this extent where it's like, listen, just don't say the N-word and just don't kill us. Just don't kill us. Like, if you're talking to a cop, resisting arrest, it's like, okay, that's a card that you could pull. It's happened. It is what it is. But just don't kill us and don't say the N-word. And I think the line has to be way before that.
Of course, 100% agree. This is the year that we're acknowledging that we're not here to make white people feel comfortable. Straight up. Like this is a lot of what you said is about making someone else who's not a Black person comfortable. Straight up. Like, don't use the Black card. Does it make you uncomfortable on using the Black? Like, I'm recognizing my reality, you know, like that's your reality. And that's really effed up if someone's like, you know, uncomfortable by things that should be spoken about. You know, you mentioned something that was really great about short-term and long-term. I 100% understand, like, this has been such a long fight. This is a marathon. I understand that, right now, this is just the beginning of what's to come. Because unfortunately, with who we have as our current leaders, along with just Trump and his administration and everyone else, this is not going to be a solution that's going to be overnight. I would love if I were to go to a protest, blood, sweat, and tears for that to come out, that the things change, laws change, but that's not overnight. So we'll take small victories. Small victories is what keeps you afloat, and highlighting those small victories for people to understand that this is working. Signing petitions are working. Emailing are working. Protesting is working. Why? Because look what happened with the 4 cops now, There's more coverage, there's more conversation about it, but it is exhausting. And people of color need to recognize that you cannot pour from an empty vessel. Right. It's hard to want to be so invested. It's so hard, but not at the risk of your own health, You really do have to take time to pour into yourself, do the inner work. I was speaking to someone about this, and we were talking about the importance of inner work during this time. As people of color and allies, it's so important to do the inner work. Why? Because you're going to be able to recognize why you feel the way that you feel about certain topics. You're going to be able to recognize, what is my role in this, in all of this? Because you don't have to do it all. That's the thing too. You don't have to do it all. And sometimes we feel that we have to, because we're so upset with everything going on. We have to do everything, but that's exhausting. And this is not just a small little lap around the park we're doing. This is a whole marathon. It's going to take a long, long, long time. And so we need people to consistently show up people of color, have those conversations, and really recognize what am I willing to do for this? So doing that inner work is so important. I'm happy that you recognize that too. It's difficult to see the grand scheme of things. It's really difficult. It's frustrating because I can only imagine what your reality is, and even things that you in your coming of age that you have to have seen, and those microaggressions, all those things add up. All of those things, it's your perspective, is your reality. And so recognizing those things and seeing enough is enough. Straight up, enough is enough. I'm not here to make you feel comfortable anymore. I'm not here to soften and to make people feel comfortable. People might say, oh, I'm problematic. I'm a problematic Latina for saying certain things. Because, I'm fair skinned, for example. I've been in college, for example. People think they can just say whatever the hell they want to say in college. And I've been in situations in a room with all white people, straight up, not a single minority. I'm very fair skinned. People might think that, I may not be a conservative. They might think I'm a different type of representation, and I'm not. Yeah. I'm not. And so they will say certain things as problematic, very problematic, about immigrants, about people of color. I will be the first one to be like, that's inappropriate. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. Why you think that's okay. We're not going to do that, especially when I'm here. We're not going to do that, Mm-hmm. And that's important too, because these people really think that they can just get away with so much. I'm not here to make you feel comfortable anymore in your racism. Yeah. That's what this year is about. We're not here to make you feel comfortable in their racism. Yeah. You need to know that it's not okay. You're going to lose your job. Why? Because we don't want people who are leaders to be racist. Yeah. We need people to be inclusive, especially in the higher ups. That's crazy. Now I want these companies to straight up give more people opportunities for people of color, Mm-hmm. Have those conversations, be real allies as leaders. Yeah. That's what this is all about. And this is the start of it, which I'm very, very excited to see in the next 10 years. I'm hopeful. I have to be, mm-hmm. that things will change, and maybe not in my lifetime, at least. That's what I'm hopeful. In my lifetime, that it will be a different reality for my children and their children. And this is we really are living in a moment of history.
Yeah. It's tough too, because, although you're privileged in a sense because of your fair skin, mm-hmm. that puts you in a position where people feel oh, you don't identify with this community, therefore I can say whatever the fuck I want to you. And you therefore experience racism towards you and your community, but it's not directed towards you. And it's just, I know that can be frustrating. And, speaking of inner self, with the things you put out on social media as far as mental health awareness and how are you, what sparked you to basically give that message to people, take care of your mental health and really just focus on yourself as much as you're focusing on the world around you?
You know, I think that everyone needs a cheerleader. I think that everyone needs a cheerleader. And when I'm feeling my best self, I feel like I can do that for someone. And that for me, that looks like, you know, reminding someone to be introspective in some day. I started doing those check-ins because it was something that has tremendously changed my life. And I know that I have a platform. I have people that I connect with that I know that I can uplift in some way. Those check-ins are important because inner work is the most important thing you could do, the most transformative thing you can do in your lifetime, especially during the most challenging times like now. It's important to really recognize, how are you feeling? How can I really fill my cup today? Because a lot of what this is draining. It's the reality of everything that's happening. Everything that's happening in 2020 thus far has been draining, has been really draining. It's some people don't have the tools to navigate with that. And that's okay. You know, like, I didn't have the tools a lot in my life. Like in undergrad, I wouldn't say I had those tools to really navigate through really difficult emotions. But I've been able to really do that inner work, and it has changed my life. And so I just do that to hopefully inspire at least one person to also do the same. And maybe that might live in their spirits, you know? Yeah. That's really what it's all about. I'm just here to really uplift others and just motivate, you know? But only on days that I'm feeling that way too.
Yeah, it's tough.
You know, like, for example, like, keeping it real, this week, towards the later end of the week, I've been silent on social media. Why? Because I'm fully myself. I'm not here. I cannot advocate and be this person, you know, if I'm not 100% myself. Right. And recognizing when you need to heal and take time for yourself is important. So what I did, I was like, you know what? I need to take some time off from social media. I'm going to do something like, you know, go off for a walk, call a friend. It's okay to be happy even in these times. I know we feel guilty sometimes, you know, the guilt can, like, you know, the world is going to shambles and we feel guilty for being happy, but you're allowed to laugh. That is the biggest thing you can do. People of color, to be happy. That is its own self. It's like its own thing. It's like its own sign to others. Like, this is who we are. We're thriving and we're going to continue thriving. That is you manifesting that you want that for yourself and for everyone else. So I think, I hope that people take that message and really do the inner work. That's like the one thing I would leave off for everyone, to just really think about how you're feeling, recognizing how you are, your role in all of this in life. But yeah, it's a lot of work, you know?
Yeah,
but it's important.
I think that's so important for me. I try to jog every day, just for like 20 minutes around my neighborhood. I walk with my sister, because my sister, she was just inside the house so much. I could tell she was starting to have anxiety, just because of everything going on and being stuck inside and having to graduate. She was looking forward to graduation. She really cares about her education, which is crazy for an 11-year-old. But like, she was mad about graduating during quarantine. She felt like a moment was taken away from her. So just going on like walks with her outside and just talking to her and like understanding, teaching her about the importance of mental health, the importance of taking breaks, and the importance of educating yourself on your power. Like, as a Black woman, I need to educate myself one and foremost in order to educate her, as far as that goes. I think you started a YouTube channel recently. I'm curious to know more about it, what you plan to do with it, and, you know, why you started it.
Yeah, so I recently started it, which is really exciting. And it's been a long waited project, you know. I even like started vlogging my whole college experience, and I never posted it. Yeah. Like, that's how much I was like committed. Like, I haven't. Oh my goodness,
it's all good.
So I always anticipated to start it, and I was afraid of putting myself out there and allowing people to see my true self, because that's for me. For a long time, I thought it was like an invasion of privacy, and I was scared of giving people access to me. Yeah. Like, that is it was a challenge that I had to overcome. And so I'm like, you know what? No, I can impact others. I can really do something. I can share my story. I did the YouTube because I want to share my story. I want to be able to talk about things that are important, like mental health. It's such a taboo. It is such a taboo, especially within my community, about mental health. And so me advocating and letting people know that, like, social media is a whole facade for a lot of people. It's a whole facade, straight up. Like, it's like you're putting the best version of yourself on social media, which is great, you know? But when we talk about and have these conversations for things that are not talked about every day, it's important. So me talking about mental health and opening up about my anxieties and stuff like that and being able to potentially help somebody else is all that matters. Whether it's a small community, whether it grows into a big community, I just want to be able to use my platform for that. And then I also just love advocating for travel. Like I was traveling a lot. I took a gap year of travel after college. And that was something it's not very common in a low income community, you know? It's almost, people really thought I was rich. Y'all, I was not rich.
I thought so too, I ain't gonna lie. I was like, okay.
I don't have a sugar daddy. People in my comments, I don't have a sugar daddy. My parents don't fund my trips. Nobody funds my trips except for me. And the way that I did it, like what people don't see behind the scenes is that I was working 3 jobs.
Right.
You know, I was a waitress in 42nd. Why did I choose to do waitress? Even with the degree, I was like, you know what? No, I want to travel. That's my goal this year for this gap year. I want to invest in myself and then get into my career and then go to my master's. So what I did, I became a waitress. That was a challenging job. I was working till 2 a.m. on 42nd. Wow. Every weekend, working insane hours. I saved up all that money because a waitress gets good money and I can save enough to take a long period of time to travel. I took a whole month off just to travel and another job wouldn't have allowed me to do that. I was doing that and I was a freelancer. It's 2 other jobs to do that. Right. You know, like that's, and I'm not promoting my unhealthy lifestyle of workaholic. That's really what I was for time in my life. Like I didn't have a social life in my life and at that point in my life, but I wanted it so badly. I wanted to travel so badly and I wanted to make it happen. And for me, that was the way that I could make it happen. And I'm happy that I did. I went to Thailand, I went to Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Amsterdam, Jamaica, like all those things were because I literally invested in myself. And I want to show others that you can do it too, that it's possible. Like I paid $300 round trip for my Thailand trip. $300 and not in like no Spirit Airlines type of airline. Like it was an actual good airline and it was amazing. And it's possible, you know, for low income to see the world. You don't have to feel guilty for investing in yourself. And I think that's the key message I want to give on my platform. Like, don't feel guilty for investing in yourself. And here's some tools that have helped me and hopefully can help you. So that's what my platform is about. I'm excited to grow. I'm excited to, you know, make more videos and stuff and hopefully have a community and stuff. But it's been nice. It's been really nice. I have had a lot of encouraging comments on my Instagram to finally start the YouTube. But so my YouTube is Johanna Mera. You want to follow me? I'm excited. I only have 2 videos now, which is like the very start. But you got to start. You know, that's the most important part is starting. So I'm happy that you also started your podcast because that is like awesome. Yeah, like definitely. First step is starting.
Yeah, I'll definitely subscribe. You got to be sure to send me the link to YouTube.
I will. Yes.
We'll go over that later. All right. So, you know, at the end of the podcast, I always, you know, some people call their podcast episodes, volume series. I decided to call mine pages because I wanted to be different, one, and also, you know, I feel like this is like a book of life that we're living, and each page is like a different person and gives you different characters and things like that. So to justify that, at the end, I have my guests continue on a story said by the guest. And it's like, you ever played that game where you say one sentence, or I say one sentence, and you say another sentence and continue on? That's basically how it is. So,
okay. Yes.
So far, I started off with a man walks into a bar. And then my friend Dave, he said, then he wakes up, of course, trying to be different. The man walks into a bar, then he wakes up. And he walks downstairs in his pajamas behind his own bar. And he serves himself a drink and his homeless friend Rick that comes every morning. So he serves himself a drink and his homeless friend Rick that comes every morning. And you get the chance to continue on the story.
Okay, then they decide to go for a walk.
Okay, that's dope. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. And see you.